What is up, people? Welcome back to Double Take with John and Alex Sayf. And I cannot start this episode without immediately saying 3 words, John. Heat in 5.
Should have been 4.
Should have been 4.
Those are my words.
The refs blew it. It's not even worth getting into, but we did it. We all season long, especially all playoffs long. This is what we had marked. We said we match up with the Bucks well. We have our shooting. We have our wall that we're going to build against Giannis. We're going to shut down the paint. We're going to lock him down. Bam's the Giannis stopper, even though Bam didn't spend a lot of time guarding him one-on-one. But we said it, and now look at us, John. Look at us, Heat fans.
Well, listen, first I just want
back
to say,
in the first Eastern Conference Finals since 2014 when we had Wade, LeBron, and Bosh.
and I never doubted. I picked us to win, but I picked us to win in 7 against the Bucks. You didn't even pick them, Alex. So,
Well,
we both have our apologies to make to the Miami Heat. I'm sorry I doubted you guys. I should have picked you in 5 games.
I mean,
not 7.
John, you can go back and listen. I said I was picking the Bucks. I was betting. That's where
I picked them to win the title.
I said that's where I would put my money. Although, I mean, in real life, I actually did put money on the Heat. I won like $70. Anyway, I said that's where I put my money. I said my heart told me Lakers, Heat. But quick, before we get too carried away with our Miami Heat excitement, let me give a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about today. So, of course, we're going to talk about the Miami Heat's epic win over the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. Then we are going to talk about the Bucks offseason. What are they going to do with Giannis? How can they better their team? How can they improve? What's going to happen? Is Giannis coming to Miami? Little spoiler alert. Yes.
Yeah.
Then we're going to cover Lakers-Rockets Game 3. Amazing game. We saw, I think we really just saw both of those teams, play almost as good as they could until finally Rondo was the one difference maker, and he really put the game away. So we're going to talk about Lakers-Rockets and Rondo. And then, of course, we will give our predictions for how the Clippers-Denver Game 4 and pretty much the series, because this is a really series-deciding game. I mean, if it's either 2-2 or 3-1, if the Clippers win, that would be pretty much it. And then we're also going to talk about the Raptors versus the Boston Celtics in Game 6. But first, let's get back, John. Let's get back to the Heat, okay? So, as I said, first Eastern Conference Finals since 2014. I saw this, and this was crazy when I read this on Twitter. The Heat have played in 7 of the last 15 Eastern Conference Finals, which is about half. The next place is probably like Boston with around 5.
We've gone to the finals, 5 out of 7?
We've gone...
Well, this
5, yeah.
The only one we didn't go was in 2005, and if we don't go this year, that'll be the second
yeah.
one we go.
And in 2005, a Heat fan wouldn't listen to that without saying Wade got injured that series, so it really should have been another one. Anyway, 7 of the last 15 Eastern Conference Finals, which is just incredible, and you just have to give even more credit to our whole. I mean, we talk about it, Heat culture, which actually we'll get to that. I'm gonna cut that out. But we have to give one specific shout out, John, to the player of the game. He gets the game ball. No, it's not Kelly Olynyk, although he played crucial minutes and probably had the best plus minus in the game. It is Tyler.
After this guy.
Tyler Hero, the baby goat. It was Tyler Tuesday last night, John.
Tyler was plus 23. Olynyk was plus 22 in the game.
Okay, wow. So Tyler edged him out. I remember seeing that Olynyk had come in and we had a huge jump. But Tyler Hero, I mean, we can't say enough good things about him. He's 20 years old. He plays like he's been in the league for 10 years. He just has this swagger, this charisma, and this comfortability on the court and confidence. And it's like there's not this he doesn't get fazed by him. This is what a lot of people were saying on Twitter. He's a culture guy, but nothing fazes him. And people were saying this when he hit those big shots in Game 4, even though we lost. It was like someone remind Tyler Hero that he's a rookie because he's out here and he's just hooping. And you look at his birthday, and me and John, we always talk about this. We probably said this a million times. He's only a week older than us.
Yeah, he can't even legally drink a beer, and he's balling out, taking our team to the conference finals.
It's gonna be interesting when we get our champagne shower. Knock on wood, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Tyler Hero, player of the game, absolutely incredible. One thing I will say though, not to be negative, but something we were arguing about during the game was I was arguing about mostly Butler, but as well Bam just being super, super passive. And Butler ended up, I didn't even realize this until just now, looking at the box score. Butler only shot 6 shots.
Right.
Which is just crazy. And
he had 6 assists.
Once again, it goes back to our depth, John, which is something we've talked about a ton, is like the Heat are so deep that our best player can go 4 for 6, which that's a good percentage, but he only shoots 6 shots, and it doesn't matter. We're able to win by 9 points in a crucial playoff game.
During the game, I was getting on you because you were so frustrated at the beginning, and you're like, Jimmy needs to take over, someone needs to take over, Goran needs to take over, and I was saying, listen, that's not Miami Heat basketball. It's not what we do. We're a team, and the way that we will take over, it was making a team run. And it's what we did. I remember at one point in maybe the second or third quarter, the lineup was Nunn, Iguodala, I want to say Olynyk, and then either Hero or Dragic. And I think it was like we had 4 back-to-back buckets, and it was each of those guys scoring. It wasn't just one dude going bucket, 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 bucket. It wasn't just Jimmy taking over the way he did at the end of game 1. We know he's capable of doing it, but it's usually not how we make those runs when we start off to a bad start like we did yesterday in game 5.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The only thing, I think you're a little bit misunderstanding what my point was. My point is, in the beginning of the game when things looked like they were, we looked like a different team in the first quarter. I'll say that the team that not the team that we've been all season. And when that happened, that's when I expect the people, our leaders, Butler, Dragic, Bam, to say, all right, guys, relax, let me get a few easy buckets, let's calm down, let's get in our rhythm, and then figure it out.
And that's why when we called that timeout, I was completely calm about it because I knew Coach Spo was going to be that way, and Udonis was going to be that way. Yeah. Udonis was going to get on the guys right way. And Spo said it after the first quarter at the media. They interviewed him, whatever, TNT, whoever it was. And he said, listen, the way he said was so calm. Yeah. Our guys want it very bad. I want us to get in our rhythm a little bit more. I want us to relax and just make a little run here. When he said that, I was just like, okay. I knew at that point he had it under control. I was not being like, oh no, why is Jimmy so flustered? Oh no, why are we playing this way? I knew Coach had it under control. UD's gonna get on them with the tough love that they need to play better when Jimmy has 3 turnovers in the first quarter like that. And guess what? Jimmy only ended up with 5 turnovers for the rest of the game. So
that's nothing. We did have a ton of turnovers, but anyway, good point about Spo. In Spo we trust, in Riley we trust, in UD we trust. These are the guys who they embody the culture, as we always talk about. But just to sit here, even John, and now it became expected of us to win this series once we went up 3-0. It was pretty much, everyone counted out the Bucks, and to be sitting here after beating the Bucks, going up 4-1. Even when my professor asked me a week ago after he found out I was a Heat fan, he said, "Oh, what do you think about their chances against the Bucks?" That was the day of game 1. I said Heat in 6. And today he said, "Oh, you were right." I said, "Well, I did expect the Bucks to take one more game from us, but no one really believed in us all season. Starting from Jimmy Butler leaving the Sixers, and people were saying, "Oh, he's gonna go be on an 8th seed." To Colin Cowherd not knowing who Bam was and saying that the undrafted players in our starting lineup, Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, quote unquote, can't shoot. And then even to when look at us Heat fans looking back a year ago, I didn't feel confident about stuff maybe a year and a half ago about how we're going to get rid of these contracts with Hassan Whiteside and Waiters and James Johnson. And you look at what we did. We drafted Hero. We developed Duncan Robinson. We picked up Kendrick Nunn. We ended up getting to trade for Butler, Myers Leonard, Jay Crowder, Iguodala. Our whole team really.
You saying that reminds me of just the clip of Colin Cowherd. They have 2 undrafted guys in their starting lineup. I can't pick Miami. Yeah. Miami's not any good. They can't shoot. Or the number 1 3-point shooting percentage in the NBA. Completely stupid. The fact that he goes to the 2 undrafted guys, that is just the worst argument. That means nothing. Where they got drafted. Mm-hmm. Greg Oden went number 1. We've seen guys like Draymond Green, Manu Ginobili go in the end of the draft. So
yeah, and it feels great to be that underdog team.
Yeah, and that's why we see these guys. Colin Cowherd, who I hate to say it, and even Stephen A. Smith, who's was not high on us into it.
Well, there's really funny clips where there's literally of him going back and forth, clip of him saying stuff why he doesn't think that he will be good, and I saw on Twitter, and stuff he will think we will be good. So it's just he went back and forth so many times, oh, they're tough, versus, oh, Jimmy Butler's not going to get it done, versus, just back and forth.
So Stephen A's like that, but I definitely think that's because they're talking heads, they're for entertainment, they're not giving us real basketball analysis. And I like Colin Cowherd, he's entertaining, and I like when he gives his little speeches and he shows us different things in a different way that we didn't think about and whatever, gives all these weird analogies.
But he exposed himself.
Yeah.
He exposed himself for that Heat.
He exposed himself by calling out the Heat, and that's fine because I don't expect him to really watch basketball and know who our guys are, and that's what was so rewarding.
You should.
All year long, really watching, and not even all year long, for the past few seasons, this team has been coming together, and watching it as a Heat fan does, that's the team that I watch more than any other team, obviously. You know, even after, like, in the playoffs, it's the team I might miss a Bucks versus the Magic, but I'm gonna watch every single Miami Heat first round game, even when we were sweeping, you know? And because I watch every game, and during the regular season I watch our games against the Kings and the Bulls and the bad teams we play, I see what we're capable of, and we knew going in, we knew that we had a shot here, and that's why, you know, all the talking heads, they'll just say, oh, Giannis, big-time player, Giannis is going to win, whatever. And it's funny because even here, it actually was starting to become a popular take to pick the Heat because of what we started to look like. But that's why I would say this is officially my favorite Heat team ever. And like you said, Alex, it's just different being an underdog, you know? That's why it feels so great to be a Heat fan right now. We're not going 8-1 in the first 2 rounds, sweeping the Bobcats, and then, you know, winning in 5 games against the Paul Pierce-led Brooklyn Nets, you know, with LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and Ray Allen on our team. That's which is what we did in 2014. We're doing it with guys that most NBA fans don't even know that
didn't know a year
ago. And guys that like Colin Cowherd didn't even know who Bam Adebayo was, who's an all-star now, you know? So, like, we're doing with these guys, Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, 2 undrafted guys, Tyler Hero, Derrick Jones Jr., and, like, that's what we've seen us do for years. The Tyler Johnsons, the Josh Richardsons, the Hassan Whitesides, the guys that we find in the G League that become starters and potential all-stars in the future and that end up just balling for us. That's what's so beautiful about this team. It's literally all those guys.
And everything's clicking now because now we have Jimmy, who's he's the guy that kind of legitimizes everything. Like, without Jimmy, I think we were great, and it's clear when he's not playing, we're great without him.
We're playing the Pacers without Jimmy.
He really legitimizes us, and I mean, look at that game one. Game ones are in the playoffs are very crucial, and Jimmy was the guy who closed it out for us in the end of the game. So we have Jimmy, and he's the thing. Like, I think he's so important to this team, and he brings everything together.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've done our share of being excited Heat fans and cocky Heat fans for now. Maybe we'll talk later about a little preview for who we're going to face in the next round. But, John, we got to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. To put it blatantly, I mean, they kind of choked. Everyone, right? I was telling you this yesterday, John. Everyone is going to remember 2 things. They're going to remember the Bucks lost in 5, and they're going to remember that Giannis got hurt. And I'm starting to question. I think in the next few years, people are going to be like, oh, well, Giannis was hurt. That's why they lost. Not knowing that, hey, listen, we were up 3-0 when Giannis was in the lineup.
It really depends on looking back on Giannis' career. Like, let's say Giannis becomes one of the, I'm going to say top 10, but a top 20 great player ever, which seems reasonable given the fact that he's a back-to-back MVP, a defensive player of the year. I think we'll just look back on this as almost as like LeBron's first stint with Cleveland. Like, he didn't, and I'm not saying he's going to come to Miami like LeBron did, but I think Giannis still only 25 years old. Yeah. He's still got a lot of 10 seasons hopefully of at least 5 prime seasons left, and I think we're going to see him at least get 1 chip, and that's going to be with a better roster than this one that he left on. So I think the more of the takeaway would be coaching and the poor just roster that, I mean, I don't say poor roster, but not the perfect roster for him.
So here's what I'll say, John, and everyone right now is doing the whole he's more like Shaq, he needs a guy like Kobe,
Which, by the way, I said on this podcast like 3 weeks ago.
Which I think what I've seen, what the playoffs exposed to me the past 2 years of watching the Bucks is that because Giannis is so great, I think he almost, I don't say overachieves, but they're able to be very successful during the regular season. But once you get into the playoffs, it really is a different game. And what we saw in this series is we slowed the pace down. They couldn't get out in transition. Giannis couldn't get the easy buckets where he blows by everyone and outmuscles everyone because we packed the paint, and he wasn't able to be as effective as he was. Additionally, his supporting cast wasn't as effective. Why? Because guys like Eric Bledsoe can't really create their own shot, and guys like Chris Middleton, who even
almost $20 million a year.
Yeah, and guys like Chris Middleton, who's going to be paid $40 million a couple years down the line, he turned into Kobe for that 1 quarter. But he's a guy who also isn't great at getting. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because you see him do it during the regular season. You saw him.
He was consistent in the playoffs.
Yeah, in the playoffs he just doesn't show up. So if you could get a guy that's maybe older, better at handling the ball, can get shots.
Forget and like age. I'll give you the list of guys. It's guys like Bradley Beal, Victor Oladipo if his injury isn't there, Devin Booker. I would say Bradley Beal, Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray. I think those crop of guys. Like, I'm not saying he needs Luka Doncic. Luka's a top 5 guy in the league right now. I'm not saying he even needs a guy that's as good as Dwayne Wade was playing with LeBron, but he just needs the shot creator. And I said this on the podcast a while ago. Like, if you could really put together what Bledsoe does and what Middleton do, and you morph them into one player.
I don't really agree with that though,
because I don't think it's like a Kemba Walker type of guy, maybe even a Kyle Lowry. Like, honestly, like any of those guys, that's what
even Goran Dragic. I mean, their problem was definitely their point guard, and they don't have anyone who can really fill Giannis's gaps the way you'd want them to. Giannis is a guy. I mean, we know his strength. He's an athletic freak of nature. He is extremely, of course, strong. He can get to the basket.
Just dominating the paint.
But he can't. But guess what?
Shaq.
He can't.
Shaq needed
exactly.
Kobe. Kareem needed Magic.
And, of course, he's great at defense. But he can't shoot. So if you can get the guys who can shoot but also handle the ball more, then that's what's going to, that's how you're going to unlock Giannis even
Alex,
more than they have.
We've argued about this before. I swear for the past, 6 months, a year, I've been telling you this about Giannis. Because that's what I saw last year. They got Coach Bud. They weren't a 7 or an 8 seed in the East playoffs anymore. They went to a number 1 seed, and we were all like, oh my gosh, I want to see them dominate the Warriors. But you know what? They couldn't get out of the East, and why we saw it happen. Toronto created the wall. Even though they were up 2-0, what did Toronto do? Every time Giannis would get down the line, they threw 3 dudes at him. They would trap him. They made the wall, and he had to pass it. He couldn't just dunk over 5 players. And that's what happens. When you get double teamed in the playoffs, MJ needs to pass it to Steve Curry. He needs to pass it to John Paxson. And he doesn't have... And MJ, forget that because he's still the guy to make that shot. But Giannis isn't even the guy to make that mid-range shot.
The reason...
He needs that shot maker, and Middleton wasn't it, and neither was Bledsoe.
Yeah, and the reason, so I'm gonna push back, but to me that's not. I think in the past you've said that it's because of Giannis's it's his downfall, and it's his shortcoming. To me, it's their roster shortcoming that there was not a guy on the team that we were really afraid of after Giannis. Middleton had, like I said, 1 quarter where he turned into Kobe Bryant or whatever. So, but other than that, we were not really worried about Middleton. It was more. Right. We're gonna make sure we make Giannis's life as hard as possible, and if the other guys are gonna, play well, then we'll live with it.
Yeah, and you're right. It's the fault of the roster, but it's because of the game Giannis plays, and it's not anything against him. Would you still want Giannis on your team? Yes, 100 times out of 100, you want Giannis Antetokounmpo on your team. The same way you want Shaq on your team. But guess what? Shaq didn't do anything until he had a prime Kobe or a prime D Wade, and even they made it to the finals. He still had his sidekick, his guard, and Penny Hardaway. So that's how they were able to do it. And now getting just to the future of this Bucks team, Giannis said after the game, hopefully we can build a culture. By the way, he used the word culture, buzzword.
Yeah,
there. Miami.
He's talking about the Heat.
I'm sorry.
He just that's the message.
He said we can build a culture in Milwaukee for many years so that we can go back to the finals, blah, 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 whatever. And he even said this in 2018 after LeBron went to LA, my goal is to win in Milwaukee. I would never leave for LA, whatever, never do that. Who also, it's funny enough, we also heard Kevin Durant make this comment years and years ago.
Yeah, this is this is literally when LeBron went to Miami. Or maybe it was when Dwight Howard went. Whatever.
It was let's go right at these dudes. KD.
Well, the other quote. Wait, really quick. While you're saying quotes of Giannis, he also said some people see a wall and they try to go around it. They go in another direction. He's like, I'm gonna power through it.
Right.
So,
but I always want to call BS on that, Giannis, because really honest, you want to win in Milwaukee, you want to build a culture there. Sign your extension. Let's see it. Sign your extension. But you know what? He's not going to do that because he wants to maintain his leverage over the organization, and he wants to maintain the ability to test free agency in less than a year from now and come July 2021 and potentially test, do I want to go to Toronto? Do I want to go to Miami? Do I want to go to Dallas? And he's going to do that. So you really want to win in Milwaukee, to be honest. So sign your extension. You can be like Damian Lillard and stay with your team forever.
So no, I think you're coming at it from seeing it from a Kevin Durant when he was on Golden State perspective of all season long. Kevin Durant was everyone was looking at the free agency and the rest of the team was like, all right, well, what are you doing, bro? We're not gonna trust you. Whereas with I'm gonna more compare it to when LeBron in his second stint with the Cavs was signing a ton of 1-and-1s. He never locked himself down. And the reason is not because LeBron wasn't committed to Cleveland, although, yeah, and he ended up leaving. But LeBron was still committed before he'd won. I'm gonna win a championship for Cleveland. The reason he was signing 1-on-1s was to keep pressure and leverage on the front office. So guess what? You can't get lazy. You can't give up. You can't. Guess what, Cleveland? You're gonna have to try to trade these picks and make trades to win for me. Just like Giannis is saying, yeah, guess what? I'm going to leave that free agency open. If I can win in my Milwaukee, I'm going to want to do that. But if you don't give me the pieces and the teammates that I need, then guess what? I will walk out the door. Whether or not he really wants to, he's leaving that door open for him. So the front office has to, make moves.
I guess the direct quote that I'm talking about is when he says you want to build a culture and, compete out here for years and years.
No, I think he means it.
Kevin Durant wasn't saying the years and years thing while he was, in one of his last 2 seasons with Oklahoma City. LeBron wasn't doing that with Cleveland because they had been already testing that out. And here we've seen them test it. Number 1 seed 2 years in a row. And that's why now I need to get to the point of when a team has a shortcoming, who do we blame? We always blame the coach when a team underachieves, unless it's like, LeBron in 2011 just having a complete meltdown. Yeah. It's not like anyone was wildly not doing what they usually did all season. I mean, I guess Giannis, we shut him down. But that's more of the coaching that I would say in the system. And I just think, sadly for Coach Bud, he's just not the coach. He's a great coach. He can get you 60 wins in the regular season, but he's not the coach that's going to make adjustments on the fly. And that's why Coach Spo was like, Kendrick Perkins said this on First Take today. He was calling out Stephen A. and Max Kellerman because they didn't point the finger at Bud. And Kendrick was saying Spo coached circles around him, and he really did. Spo just and it got to the point where, during the regular season, we went 2-1 against them. And the one time they beat us was in the bubble. We were up 23, and Middleton and Giannis combined for like 70 in the game.
They combined with 66.
We didn't. I think it was 70. And we didn't even have Goran or Butler in that game, right? So we were up 23 against them, and we didn't even have our top 2 guys. And so the one time, so we get to the point after games 1 and game 2 where I'm like, I don't even know how this team, what the blueprint is for them to beat us. I guess they're hoping it's another close game and they get a foul call at the end of the game. Well, but just for what we did for the whole series, it was like Coach Bud didn't make any good adjustments. It's not like he's changed the starting lineup. He didn't make any different defensive switch or anything. What were they going to do?
He did this. He was coaching the same way that he was coaching throughout the regular season, which was, in the regular season, Giannis averaged 30 minutes a game. In the playoffs, Giannis was probably...
I didn't even think about it. That was so bad, too. He didn't even play his players.
Giannis averaged... I'll tell you how many minutes he averaged in the playoffs. 30 minutes. 31 minutes. So I think that gets dragged down, obviously, from the injured
last
game.
Yeah.
But
throw that outlier game out.
But, yeah. But at the same time... But I also want to put some blame on Giannis, John, because although, it looks like Mike Budenholzer didn't really, change his plan or anything from the regular season, which in the playoffs you definitely have to. What I saw Giannis do in the beginning of Game 4, so in the first quarter and I think when did he get injured? The second quarter? So the first quarter and a half, that was when Giannis, that's when I could tell. He's like, all right, I'm not letting my team lose. I'm putting my head down. If I have to get through everyone, I'm going to do it. And he had 18, 19 points. He played less than a half, John. He had around 18 or 19 points.
Yeah, 19.
Meanwhile, he averaged the rest of the other 3 games that he played, he averaged 22. So you're telling me in those other games, I just think Giannis should have had that mindset after going down 0-1. You go down 0-1, Giannis needs to say, that's it. Let me put the team on back. But definitely after you go down 0-2.
I would add some heat. I don't want to say fatigue, but you beat a team 3 times in a row, and eventually by the 4th game, you're a little bit more spent. And I think Giannis mixed that. It's the complacency mixed with Giannis being like, I'm back against the wall. I'm not letting my team lose. And you're right. He should have looked like that. But after game 1, after game 2, and game 3, and then they went down 3-0, and we finally saw it from him. Yeah. But I would also say, the reason I'm not blaming him as much is because we saw him make a lot of the right plays. And in the beginning of game 1, I said I looked at it and I was happy because Giannis was at the beginning of game 1. They were going off against us. I think they had an early 10, 11 point lead, and that's because Giannis was hitting far out shots. And he was passing the ball to his teammates who were making them. But eventually he started doing that over and over and over. Throughout the rest of the game, he was missing his jump shots. And his teammates weren't making everything the way Chris Middleton
He shot too many jumpers, that's true.
So eventually, that was the blueprint. We wanted to say, all right, this is the one thing that they center the whole team around. We want to get rid of that, and we're going to make Eric Bledsoe and Chris Middleton and Dante DiVincenzo beat us. And you know what? Chris Middleton did beat us that one game, and it was because Giannis was hurt, of course. But that's my point there is that, to me, it's more so what the coach didn't do, and I think he should get fired.
Okay.
4 straight games he lost last year to the Raptors, and it was pretty much 4 games this year again.
I mean, you could say 5.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. I don't know if he'll get fired. I would be a little surprised just because I feel like they kind of trust Bud and, like, he's our guy. But at the same time, this is a lot of pressure on them in general this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, enough about the Heat and the Bucks. Now, John, let's move on. The other game that we watched last night was the Lakers versus the Rockets in Game 3. And so, something Nick Wright has been saying is, which I definitely don't agree with this, but it's an interesting point after watching last game. He said, the only team that can beat the Lakers, even when the Lakers play their A game, is the Rockets. And whoever wins this series will win the championship, which I think is crazy. I mean, if you're picking the Lakers, that's one thing. But the Rockets, just because they beat the Lakers, doesn't mean they're going to win the championship. Anyway, and I think we saw it last night. We saw in the first half, the Lakers come out, and at halftime, I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? LeBron had his best first half since 2018 in the game 1 of the finals in 2018.
Right.
And Davis also had a solid half. I think by LeBron had 29 points.
29 in the first
10
half.
for 14, and
he was
had
on pace for 60 points.
He hit 4 threes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's all happening, and it was still a really close game. I don't think they even had the lead. But
actually, yeah, like they were down 3 going into halftime. So
yeah.
LeBron had 29 points in the first half, and they're down 3.
And Davis had like almost 17. Davis had almost 20.
Then I was thinking, all right, this looks like it could go 7 because LeBron and Davis given their A games, and it's a close game. They're down 3.
And my takeaway at halftime, I was like, wow, this team is really just LeBron, Davis, and just a bunch of guys. There's no like guy who's like, I'm the third guy. And guess what happened? In the second half,
mainly the fourth quarter, too.
Yeah, mainly the fourth quarter. We saw LeBron and Davis continue their dominance, and Rondo emerged, and he said, hey, I'm going to be the third guy.
That's the third guy.
In his last 2 games, he has, I think, 18. Yeah, he's had 9 assists in each game, so he has 18 assists total. So he's done something for this team that, all season long, we've had LeBron as their point guard, which that's another discussion about LeBron's position and what he does and whatever. But LeBron has been the point guard, so they haven't really had any other playmakers. And with losing Rondo going into the bubble, that was something that I think they definitely suffered from. And now Rondo coming back, it's another guy. It allows LeBron to be like, all right, I can be more of a scoring role than just having to be the facilitator as well. Also, LeBron didn't have a lot of assists last night.
And also Rondo defensively, Rondo helps so much as opposed to having, Caruso in the backcourt guarding Russell Westbrook or James Harden, So Rondo takes a lot of pressure off them. And again, just like going into the halftime, going into the fourth quarter, it was 82-82. And then I'm sitting like, all right, this looks like a 7-game series. It's Game 3. And it wasn't the Game 3 we saw from the Lakers in the first round against the Blazers, tied 1-1 the series. The Lakers go out and just dominate the Blazers. The series was over after Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this game, I don't know. I think this one's it looks like it could go 7, and then Rondo took over. So the thing is, I don't know if I'm going to count on, even though he's got, his name is Playoff Rondo now, I don't know if I'm going to count on Rondo to win every fourth quarter for them. So LeBron had 29 in the first half. I was like, all right, what's he going to do in the second half? He's going to have to just continue the scoring outburst. Of course, he slowed down. He only had, I believe, 6 in the second half. He ended up with 35. But I don't know. If Rondo can continually produce for them, then of course I think I'm going to stick with this pick and pick them to win the championship.
Well, no, I agree with you there, John. I don't expect Rondo to come out and hit, how many threes? He had 3 threes last night. He was 3 for 5. I don't expect that to happen. But, like I said, something that he really does open up for the team in general, whether or not he's hitting shots, is being that playmaker. So he's played, in the last 2 games that he's played, LeBron has had 5 assists and he had 9 assists. But if you go back and look from game 1 of the playoffs, LeBron had, these are his assist counts. 16, 7, 8, 10, 10, 7, and then he had 9 in game 2 versus Houston when Rondo also had 9. And then last night, we saw LeBron scoring at an incredible, this is probably his best scoring game, not his highest scoring game of the playoffs, but probably his best and most efficient one. And because we saw him also hitting 44% of his threes. But I think that's only because Rondo is being more of a playmaker and allowing for LeBron to not have to worry about getting everyone else involved, because now there's another guy in the court who can do it.
Right. Definitely big for him, especially going into their series next round, which I believe will be against the Clippers, especially after what we saw in Game 1. But The Denver Nuggets did respond back game 2. Before game 3, a close game, the Clippers just came out and sat on them again and trounced them in the fourth quarter. What do you think, Alex, about the Clippers-Nuggets series? Do you see the Nuggets making this interesting and maybe stealing one more game, or is this series over?
Well, I don't really agree that the Clippers sat on them in game 3.
I'll say this. In the fourth quarter, it looked similar to that Rockets. It was close. The Nuggets had the game for a lot of it, and then the Clippers did what they did. They have this on switch, like a lot of great teams we've seen in NBA history. They flipped the on switch on, and they turned it on, and they ended up pulling that game out.
Well, here's what I'll say. Game 2, the game that the Clippers, or excuse me, that the Nuggets actually did win, that kind of surprised everyone. Kawhi Leonard had 0 points in the fourth quarter. All right, now you go to this game. Game 3, it's tied 1-1. It's tied 1-1. It's game 3. The game is close. Kawhi hits only one shot in the fourth quarter, and they still lost. Yes, Paul George probably had his best game of the playoffs.
Wait, who lost?
The Nuggets still lost, even though Kawhi, didn't have a great fourth quarter. Yes, Paul George had his best game of the playoffs, but I really want to put a lot of blame on Denver, and I know Jokic in those last 2 games has averaged 29 points and 15 rebounds. So he's been incredible for them. He's been, torching their team. He saw Zubac fouled out in game 3. And he's been the key against the Clippers right now. But for them to close out that game, it was a close game. They ended up losing by 6 points. You can't be going. And what happened was they would run the pick and rolls, and every time the guy who got open, to my disappointment, was Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant 3 times in a row. It's like under 3 minutes left. The game's on the line, and 3 times in a row, Jeremy Grant, who ended up 5 for 14 for the game, is shooting a shot. The guy who's shooting the shots at the end of the game needs to be 1 or 2 or 3 guy. Actually, Porter Jr. was also playing a good game, so I went up, but he wasn't on the court because defense. Actually, no, he was. Anyway, Porter Jr. can be shooting, but I want it to be Murray or Jokic, and maybe Gary Harris. When Jeremy Grant is struggling all game, I don't care if he's open. You need to move the ball, because watching that happen 3 plays in a row when there was a game that was very winnable and a crucial game, going up 2-1 against a juggernaut like the Clippers is huge. Not to say that that's game over, but forcing the Clippers
100% would not have been game over yet.
Or excuse me, series over. So forcing the Clippers to really turn it on and go, all right, we got to win 4 out of the next 5 games. That would have been huge. But of course, Denver loses it, and it sucks even more, because losing game 1 was a complete blowout for Denver, and like they didn't really stand a chance. But this game, you look at it and you're like, man, they really should have and could have won. Jamal Murray could have played a lot better too. But of course,
needed Jeremy Grant out there for defense. But you're definitely right. But also,
no doubt,
Jamal Murray, he's got his work cut out for him, and that's what was so awesome to see in game 2. He had 2 sick plays that everyone was playing, on Twitter, SportsCenter for the next day, of him. One move against Kawhi, scoring on Kawhi, and then one move against Paul George, scoring on Paul George. That's who is on him. So, and that's why this series was going to be an uphill battle for them to even win in the first place, especially coming after a 7-game series against Utah. But
that's why Jokic has been so good and also so important
to dominate on Zubac. So, Alex, who you sticking with the Clippers to win this series?
So the Clippers are going to win this series.
Do they win tonight?
Tonight for game 4. I don't see Denver winning. I guess I would be pretty surprised if Denver was able to win. I think the Clippers they're starting to, I don't want to use this whole switch to turning it on, whatever. But I think we saw Kawhi, probably not to say that he was bad the last 2 games, but
his least good.
To his standard, the last 2 games he hasn't been great, and those are 2 winnable games for Denver, and I don't think we're going to see much more of Kawhi not playing well. So I don't expect Denver to win tonight. I think the other night was the night for them to win. The Clippers are going to go up 3-1, and then that's pretty much going to be it for Denver.
And then lastly, Alex, tonight we got Raptors and we got the Celtics. If the Celtics win, they will face us, the Miami Heat, in the conference finals. Who do you got in Game 6?
Okay, I'm just putting this energy into the world. I'm not thinking in my head anymore. The Raptors are gonna win. This is going to Game 7. I don't care who wins in Game 7, but the Raptors are winning tonight. It's going Game 7. The Heat are getting a few extra days of rest. They're gonna take whoever wins that battle, which we don't care. But John, what's your prediction?
I'm actually going to pick, I think Celtics are going to close it out tonight in 6 games. Even though before the playoffs, I thought this series would go 7. I do not love what I've seen from the Raptors, specifically from Siakam. He's the best player. He should be playing a lot better. Even to the point where his coach, horrible quote from Nick Nurse.
Oh my God. What are you doing, Nick Nurse?
As a leader, bad.
What was it? Do you have it?
He was calling out Siakam. He essentially, I'm just paraphrasing, but essentially he was saying, it's a real bummer that Siakam isn't playing better. He was such an important player for us in the regular season and last playoffs. Last year in the playoffs.
He said, I don't know. The quote was, I don't know why he's struggling so much. Horrible. He's been great for us all season and in last year's playoffs too.
Yeah. Hey, coach, take some extreme ownership, okay? Jocko style.
Well, it's just don't hang your guy out to dry in the interview, in the press conference.
A Game 5 blowout. So yeah, I'm gonna pick the Celtics close out. And actually, forgetting the timetable, Alex, I think the Eastern Conference Finals are slated to start September 15th. So today's the 9th. I think it's in a week. So I think
what do you mean?
The Eastern Conference Finals.
They're not gonna start.
So
they're gonna start.
Well, you think about it like this. Does the NBA want to have the Eastern Conference Finals way ahead of the West? Because the Lakers could go 7 with the Rockets, and who knows? Even the Denver, if Denver wins one more game, they could win. That series could go 6. So they don't want the Heat or the Celtics or the Raptors, I guess, if they win the next 2 games. They don't want them waiting for
up to a week.
Weeks.
Would it be 2
the
weeks?
The Western Conference Finals are over.
That's pretty crazy.
So regardless of whoever wins, whether the Raptors win in 7 or whether the Celtics win in 6 or 7, whatever happens, I think the next week is going to be put aside for rest for all those teams. So thank God, I'm glad the Miami Heat are able to rest.
Wow. We took care of business early. So
we did it. Lastly, before we conclude this episode, we got to talk about our safe bets. But first, Alex, are you switching any of your picks for the finals because you picked the Bucks? Are you switching it up? You going with the Heat? You going with the Lakers or Clippers? Who do you got instead of the Bucks to win it all now?
Yeah, so John, my team did get knocked out. The team that I picked, but not the team that I really picked. So the Heat are going all the way. We're gonna beat the Lakers in the finals. And you heard it here first. Heat in 4 over the Celtics, Heat in 4 over the Lakers.
A 16-1 playoff.
That's right, 16-1.
Greatest team of all time.
No, I'm just kidding. But going to next series, John, it looks right now the Celtics are up 3-2. We're probably gonna play the Celtics. I guess I'm most afraid of the Celtics compared to the last 2 teams that we've played. But the only guy that I'm really terrified of is more like a Kemba Walker who's playing at an elite level. I know you probably are more worried about Tatum. Brown has been garbage in these playoffs.
Tatum scares me.
Of course, Tatum is probably the best player on the team. But against the Miami Heat, John, the thing that we are going to struggle against the most is a point guard like Kemba. If Kemba is going and Kemba's playing, as good as he's been in these playoffs, it's going to be tough for us. And starting lineup, you look at it, who's guarding him? Probably Goran Dragic.
Yeah,
Goran hasn't been garbage as on defense.
Probably going to have to hide Duncan and put him on Marcus Smart when he's in the game for him. We're assuming Hayward's going to miss the beginning of the series.
But I do expect us to run lineups, even more defensive lineups, against the Celtics than we did against the Bucks. Although Spo always does a good job. If we have Duncan and Hero or Duncan and Gorn or Gorn and Hero, he usually has those other guys he'll have Jimmy, Andre, Bam, So he always makes sure that we have a good amount of defensive players. But I think what we're going to see in this series is, if it's a Celtics, Raptors is kind of another story, but if it's a Celtics, I imagine that we'll do more defensive lineups because they have 3 and potentially 4 guys. If Gordon Hayward can come back, that's these guys can, on any given night, go for 30.
Honestly, ew on just Hayward, and they need to get rid of him already. I think he has a player option after this year, which he'll probably take to make that money. But the fact that they're this good without him just means they didn't need him in the first place, which I'm not feeling bad for you Celtics fans at all, but that's a gross contract I would never
Addition
want.
by subtraction?
Yeah, they need to get rid of him. All right, but now we got to get to our safe bets of the week. But first, I got to just explain myself. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I was picking all the Celtics. I was 3-1 in my 4 safe bets that we've done the past few weeks on the show. And I didn't pick the Celtics again. And I went with the Nuggets, plus 8.5 in game 1 against the Clippers. They got annihilated. You also picked the Clippers in that one, so you won. So now you're 2-3. I'm 3-2 with my safe bets. So I got to go back to what was working for me. I was gonna, if I had picked the Celtics,
disgusting.
If I had picked the Celtics, I would have been 4-1. So you know what? I gotta go with the Celtics again tonight, Wednesday night, -3.5. Boston. I got them closing out the series against the Raptors. Who are you going with, Alex?
Celtics -3. I actually have something written here on the paper. I have LA -5 in game 4 against the Rockets, but I'm sick of you picking the Celtics, so I'm actually going to pick against the Celtics. I'm picking Toronto. Toronto's winning game 6, and I have 3 points too. So let's say it's a close game. I mean, listen, I know they
just got annihilated.
We were just talking trash about Pascal Siakam and how he's been absolute garbage this series, but I refuse to believe that he's going to play as terrible as he's played in the last 5 games. And yes, is that wishful thinking? Yes, it's wishful thinking.
Hey,
but Siakam's going to come out
for game
and 7. Fred VanVleet. Oh, actually, quick stat for you guys. In games that Fred VanVleet shot 38% or over from 3-point range, they won. So when Freddie's on, the Raptors are in the game. And last game, he went 2 for 7 from 3-point range. In game 1, that ugly loss for the Raptors, he went 2 for 11, and in game 2, or another loss, he went 3 for 12. So he's finally gonna come in. He's gonna hit like 5 to 6 to 7 threes, and they're gonna win. Screw Boston. Basically.
Hey, I'm here for a game 7. I just don't think it's happening. Boston's gonna win in 6, and then the Heat are gonna take them on next round.
Well, yeah, and who do you have against the Heat, Don? How about that?
I'm gonna stick with my bracket. Lakers over Celtics in the final.
You sicken me.
I'm not jinxing anything on my team.
What a terrible note to end the show on. But I'll end with a better one. Thank you all for listening. As always, go Heat. Have a good one.